movie in the making, but a movie unlike any other ever made. When it's completed, not a single human being will appear on the screen, for a whole new world has been created. The world of the dark crystal, inhabited only by strange and magical creatures.
Oh, spectacular. Great, sure.
After 5 years' work, the movie is nearing completion on the back lot of Elstree Studios, England. Shooting is about to begin of one of the climactic scenes, a battle between the forces of good and evil, between the gentle Landstriders and the deadly Gartham.
And then hit. And then I come back, over. And then side.
Hi, Mum.
When we first started on this project, I wanted to create the world first. I wanted to start with a visual world of what these characters looked like and what the whole place was. Plants, trees, rocks, all of that. Start with that first and then have the story grow. And so that was what we did. You know, we began thinking about this, and about the same time we started thinking about it, I saw some of the work of Brian Froud, and I immediately loved it. I thought it would be the sort of thing that was just right for this particular idea, and his concepts visually were the type of thing that we could translate into 3 dimensions. One of the things that attracted me to it was I felt that these particular creatures that he designed, they were the sort of thing that would easily become a living, breathing creature. And so with that in mind, I went to see Brian.
Jim came to visit me in Devon, and we went out for a walk, and there were twisted trees and moss, and he said he wanted the film to feel like this. Jim wanted a rich, organic feeling to the whole film. It's reflected in some of the landscape that surrounds me in Dartmoor. We did a lot of research, did a lot of reading into various religions and philosophies and art forms. We wanted to make these characters alive, to exist in their own world, not just for the very short time that we see them in the movie. We want to know that when we leave them at the end of the film, that they're still living, they still have their own lifestyles. Jim had feelings about what the major creatures were and some of their characteristics, and it was my job to show how they looked. I always start with the eye. The eye is the focal point of all these characters. And for the Skeksis, they needed to have a penetrating stare. The Skeksis are the evil race of beings that are central to the movie. They are part reptile, part predatory bird, part dragon. The mystics were a gentle race of beings that brought up Jen, the Gelfling. They're partly old wizard, partly some sort of strange animal. The Gelflings, I suppose, are basically our hero and heroine. They are the ones that we identify with. They take us through the film. We originally conceived the pod people as being very much part of the earth itself. So we based them literally on potatoes. I'm used to being the master of a world that I create on the flat page. It's sometimes been difficult to create a world for somebody else, to try to make the visions coincide. But I think we have. I think it's been very successful.
Brian first came to New York and joined a group which at that time was quite small. I think we were somewhere between 6 and 8 people who had first started to play with some ideas and working from some of his early sketches and illustrations. We would take these character sketches to our sculptors, our designers, and they would start building this thing in 3 dimensions. And they would work with it for a while and get it to the point where we could actually operate it as a puppet. And then, on the other hand, we sometimes would start with a way of operating something, the way a character would be moved and so forth, and we would take that and show that to Brian and say, this is the kind of thing, this is how it moves. Would you design it and show us what it looks like? And so then he would turn that into an animal or a creature or whatever. It was a back and forth process where we would design a rough one, we would build the thing, we'd put it on videotape. We usually just shot a little tape of the rough tape of it in the studio, and then we'd all look at it, talk about it a while, and then pull it all apart and start all over again. And so the final characters that are on film now in the Dark Crystal are many generations down. They've been built and rebuilt and changed and shifted, and so each character is the result of sort of many generations of growth. The Gelflings, I really feel, were the hardest of the characters to design, in that we had decided they should be the most human. They are kind of our bridge characters, the characters through which the audience enters this world. And so as such, there were many different ways we could go, many different options.
I started by sculpting tiny heads in plasticine, and I worked very quickly, so I just keep sculpting them and turning them out. And, you know, Jim and Brian would come by and say, yes, well, I like that, but change the eyes, change the mouth. And we went through a whole series of developments, from a very animal-like face for each of them to a much more human face. And it was very difficult to get a female animal-like creature to look pretty enough, so we developed away from that. And finally, it seemed like after years of this, I did get 2 heads And Jim and Frank and Brian came to look at them, and they finally said, yes, I think that's it. I think those will be the Gelflings.
Rovier. Huh? What cruda?
You Gelfling? Like me?
Well, yes.
But I thought I was the only one.
I thought I was.
The Gelflings are a good example of early creature development that was carried out by all of the creature groups prior to the development of the story, which is just the reverse of what normally is done in a film. Out of the creature development grew a story that Jim had formulated and on into a screenplay by David Odell. The screenplay was then developed into an elaborate series of storyboards, several thousand actually, because in a film of this type, the visual look of the film has to be worked out so carefully in the storyboards, shot for shot, especially when you have restricted movement on the part of some of the creatures. So in a lot of cases, we did whole sequences of storyboards that were rejected and done over because of the movement couldn't be accomplished or some other technical difficulty, and it saved a lot of time during shooting. Yeah, the images in the shard have to be vertical because that's the kind of shape we're going into.
Certainly not 3, and probably not 2.
The shard also.
The story of the Dark Crystal concerns a Gelfling whose name is Jen. He has lived with creatures called the Mystics, who are very gentle all his life, but he was orphaned, and they saved him, and now he's about to go on a quest.
The Skeksis killed my mother and father.
The story runs deeper than you know, and you are part of it.
I don't understand.
The Skeksis will vow to destroy you. For the prophecy says you must find the shard. The crystal shard.
The crystal shard?
To save our world, Gelfling, you must find the shard.
The shard is the piece of the Dark Crystal. The shard was broken off 1,000 years ago, and he has to heal the crystal. That's essentially the story. It's a story of good and evil, of Jen's growth, of meeting a new world.
The single most difficult thing in the Dark Crystal, I think, was the development of the creatures. They would have to carry the film. Once it was determined what the various types of creatures would look like, there was a lot of engineering work done to formulate all of the various moves. There was a lot of testing during the first year and a half of all aspects of movement, look, expression, even before we got to the point of the surface texture and detail of the costumes and the faces. All of the final textures that you see in the finished film were developed through this period. Once we had developed the prototypes, there were many people that worked in the creature department assigned in design groups to a particular group of creatures.
Working on the Skeksis, they're the nasties in the film. One of the characters is a Chamberlain, which was Frank's. He had a very definite idea when he came into it what he wanted. He wanted a really sleazy, unpleasant character that you definitely wouldn't trust. So he wanted him sculpted with a smile. But we thought it would be better to mechanize his smile so that he could drop the smile and frown when he wanted to and get the smile back again.
Originally, when we first designed the Skeksis, I think one of the things we started with was the 7 deadly sins. And those became the basis of some of the characters, although we have 9 Skeksis. And so we used 2 deadly sins twice, or maybe we made up our own deadly sins, I'm not sure.
Up your left hand, make sure it's doing something, not just that.
I was doing the ritual master, who's sort of a high priest, very pompous, arrogant. And I enjoyed that. I think there's probably part of me that's that way, you know, so that kind of comes out while you're doing it.
Good.
The Gartham master that Dave Goles was doing is the general, military, strong, and Dave did wonderful things with him. Dave himself is such a funny performer. At the end of takes, very often the general would go off into something that was hysterical that of course we couldn't use in the film.
Next thrill.
The Gourmet, Louise Gold was performing. We've never known whether these Skeksis were male or female. We always kind of liked the idea of them being some uncomfortable mixture in between. But the designer is certainly the most feminine or effeminate of them, and he comes across that way.
The creature design and fabrication was done in a unique way. Normally, a person designs something and it's executed by many others. In most of the cases here, the original designer would do his own clay sculpting, carry through to his own mold making, and even on to the finishing texture work, and in some cases even his own costume sewing, with the help of many others, of course. He supervised the project right through from beginning to end, and it turned out to be much more satisfying for the individual designers and their entire team.
In terms of making the puppets, we used so many of the different crafts. I mean, we used jewelry makers, wig makers, people who worked in latex, foam, leather, wood carvers, you name it, and we used it. Casting in plastics, casting in bronze. All of those, the crafts we were using heavily. Most of the eyes were made of glass. We did a number of them of plastic, which we made and painted ourselves. But we went through many different test eyes to arrive at the correct one for each creature. The eye movement was created and operated in a variety of ways. Some of it was radio controlled, some was operated by cables. We usually had them going side to side. We usually built in a blink, widening and narrowing of the eye. So much of the personality is dependent on that. And you read the changes of emotion through the eyes.
The various groups of people did become very attached to their creatures, and there was a little bit of rivalry sometimes between the groups. Not only over the creatures themselves, but sometimes over how much time they had to finish. Occasionally there was jealousy because one group was needed before another group, and they weren't sure whether they had time to get the final details finished before photography. They were all very concerned about how their creatures appeared on film.
We're doing the Gartham. The Gartham are a large troop of bully soldiers that work with the evil creatures in this film. They have to go out and catch peasants for converting into slaves. They have to smash down obstacles. They are the bullies for the Skeksis. We started designing this about 2 years ago, and the creature has had to evolve as the script has changed. Well, since the Gartham is inspired by crustaceans, shell creatures, we've had to create very hard finishes, so we've used fiberglass a lot. The back shells have to articulate. We have hard arms that have to look like shells. They have to be non-defeatable by any other character in this film.
The Gartham costumes were very heavy. I think they were about 70 pounds or so. And the performers couldn't walk around in them all the time. So at some point we had to build racks for them. So whenever they came off the set, we'd hook them up immediately. And so they'd get a breather.
Well, approximately a year before we began shooting the film, we had a casting session and we chose a group of performers. They were mostly dancers, mimes, clowns, acrobats, and this was all under the direction of Jean-Pierre Amiel, who is a Swiss mime, and he himself was a marvelous performer. And so he worked with this group over the next 8 months, devising the way each of these kinds of characters would move and how they would walk.
We were looking for people who could express their entire performance with their body. We look for the same sort of thing when we look for puppeteers, people who can do their entire performance in their hand, you know. And these guys had to do it with their full body.
Draw across, fly into turn, curl the water in, water falls, twist, and
I'm afraid there was something up.
Okay. So we finished there.
We tried developing new movements and mannerisms for the creatures and characters in the film because they are on another world, and we wanted to make them unworldly in both their look and their movement.
Rush.
Real fast.
Run.
Real fast.
Okay. Now, are you in danger of tripping if you go too fast? You're not in danger of tripping on your own? Okay, let's turn around and go as fast as you can as an experiment, okay? See what happens without tripping, Karen. Okay. Go ahead.
You want to go for us?
Huh?
As fast as you can.
That's it. Good. Now let's try it with your head up a little bit higher. So it's not this, but it's that. Just see what it looks like. Uh-huh. Good.
The most difficult creature to perform was undoubtedly the mystics, because the operating position is so difficult. The performer is down virtually on their haunches, walking on your haunches, with their right arm extended out if they're right-handed, and the hand is out in front of them and has the full weight of the head on it. And so it's really, I was in one time and I could hold a position maybe 5 or 10 seconds. It's very hard, and these guys were working scenes that would take 2 minutes, 3 minutes long.
And here, far from the castle, the race of mystics came to live in a dream of peace. Their ways were the gentle ways of natural wizards. Yet now there are only 10, a dying race, numbly rehearsing the ancient ways in a blur of forgetfulness. But today, the ritual gives no comfort. Today, the wisest of the mystics lies dying. Today, they summon the one who must save them.
And one of our mimes, whose name was Robbie Barnett, was a clown and a stilt walker. And he came into the rehearsal hall one day with his 10-foot stilts, and he got up on them and he was showing people how he was moving around. And I think it was Brian Froud that saw him on the stilts, and all of a sudden, had this great realization, and it was aha. And so he immediately began designing what could be done with 4 stilts. And so he put stilts on his hands as well as on his feet, and they roughed a shape over him, and we started designing the Landstrider.
The Landstriders were designed really as a mode of transport. Part of the brief was that they had to run like the wind. And this was a phrase that stuck in my mind. And how did you design a creature that could move fast? We found that a man on stilts could cover a lot of ground with very little effort. And the moment was magical. There was our creature. There was the beginnings of it. There was a creature that could run like the wind. From the basic look of a man on stilts, we developed the Landstrider.
It was a big problem to figure out how to put him totally inside of this body. And then, of course, once we got him inside the body, if he were to fall over, he would break his neck. So we had to always have a safety wire. So they're wearing a flying harness inside with a single wire going up. with this enormous crane, which had a great big arm that went out. But then they're supposed to be traveling very fast. And so in order to travel very fast, we had to have this wire travel fast above, and a pulley that ran above the Landstriders.
The prophecy didn't say anything about this.
Prophets don't know everything.
When you create an entire world, our world has all kinds of things in it already. There's a great, there's a wonderful texture and depth to this world, and if you went to photograph it, you would shoot the main action, but in the background there would be all of this other sort of edges of things and parts of life that you don't know about, but it indicates a whole depth that's there. And so in creating the world, we had to sort of create all of that depth from the beginning. And so we went into a great deal more work than we probably needed to in order to have thought out the history of all of the people and the buildings and the plants. In our original conception, we were looking for plants that were sort of halfway between plants and animals. And so we had animals that were rooted in one place, and we had plants that walked around, and we were looking for some interesting mixtures between the two. We had to work out all kinds of the background behind things, behind the visuals. We knew the landscape. We had maps of the landscape, and we knew what was over the mountain. The color schemes of all of these different areas and the different kinds of animals and plants that lived there. Very little of this ends up on the finished film. But we have to know it in order to believe this whole world, to get the entire thing working as a reality. And then even if we only show a small portion of it as part of this film, we're dealing with something that has substance.
When we wanted to show a great expanse of the landscape in this other world, it was not always possible to build it in the studio. So we relied on one of the most effective special tricks of films, glass matte painting. The live-action foreground material was photographed at the studio, and a special artist then painted most of the landscape on glass to match the previously photographed part of the scene. The two images were then married together on film.
Brian Froud did all of the original sketches. He would rough out approximately what each area of the film would look like. Then it was Harry Lang's job. He was the production designer. It was his job to convert these rough sketches into plans that would be turned into scenery.
Now, I know they're all in caves, and I wasn't sure whether the directors wanted outside the cave or inside. I've indicated it could be out.
I think
inside.
It's lovely, have to.
Yes.
So then Jim can take a look at it and say, well...
Harry had a number of art directors under him, each of which would work on a particular area of the set.
Behind that and coming out of that and going to a goblet or something.
Harry Lang really did a beautiful job of converting Brian's drawings into scenery.
Got a way to go, yes, isn't it?
At one point we had 80 plasterers working on the sets. And these guys they're not just plasterers, they're really artists, and they're sculptors. And the work that they did was just fantastic in making the stones look like real stone, like carved stone inside of the castle. The work in Mystic Valley, where they actually created this exterior look all in one large soundstage. was just fantastic.
The castle was the one set never built full scale in the film. We had the interiors of the castle on the various stages, but all the exterior views were miniatures. The landscape around the castle was built over an entire soundstage, a vast, desolate desert with mountains in the background. Then, with the right lighting and some smoke, the whole thing starts to come alive.
We were very fortunate that we were able to talk Ozzie Morris into shooting this film. It's his last film before he retires. He's one of the great cinematographers in England. Ozzie was shooting all of the footage through a Lightflex, which was a unit that sits on the front of the camera, and it gives a faint color tint to each scene.
Ask him again.
Steve, is that switched on?
It was Ozzie's feeling that he was trying to create a sense of magic, a sense of fairy tale. By giving it that sort of overall color wash, he felt it would look more like Brian's original paintings.
Close-up of Robbie's face right in here.
Sure.
A little bell on it.
Whoa. Straight into take two. When we cut on this one, we'll go back to number one and turn over without any conferences, etc., etc. Straight into take two. Right, here we go. Stand by, please. Dressers clear the set. Stalls go, please. Stalls go.
Co-directing is always a slightly complicated thing because films are normally directed by one person, and an entire film unit is not used to relating to two people, they're used to relating to one. And so when Frank and I were directing, we had to kind of constantly make sure that we were staying in touch with each other, and if I said something to one person, Frank would know about it, and so that he wouldn't contradict me, or we would generally keep a unified front to the rest of the unit. Basically, in co-directing, we both did everything, but I think my own strength is in the visual. I like to compose camera shots and think about how the camera should move and that sort of thing, and I think Frank's strength is in character development, the personalities, the interactions, the dynamics of a scene.
What's your chant? It's I don't think too many people could direct a movie together. But we know each other so well, and we know that we're after the main thrust we're after is a good movie. There's no real ego problems at all. It was essentially Jim's vision, but we both agreed on the overall concept. I believed in that vision, and except sometimes we disagreed like crazy, which is very good. I think that's very healthy. It helps the project.
Jen was probably the hardest character I've ever manipulated, in that he was very human, very lifelike. And so everything that I did with him had to be very subtle. And little tiny things, if it looked puppety, it would be a giveaway and we couldn't use it. I found, for instance, when I was trying to make the character walk, now, with the Muppets, if Kermit walks across stage, he sort of goes across like that. You know, it's really easy. You just kind of go pop, pop, pop. You know, but I found the only way that I could make Jen's walk believable would be to have him straight over my head, and then I would walk. I would take small steps, because then, as the character's head moves in relationship to going down, it was accurate. You know, and that was the only way I could do it. And if I had to sort of work slightly hunched over, the walk wouldn't be realistic. And it was amazing the subtlety of little moves that would give this thing away. You know, we would spend hours figuring out how he rises from kneeling to standing position. You know, and when does the head straighten and look around? You know, when do his eyes look up? You know, when do you cut your eyes in relationship to your head turning? All of these things that you do automatically without ever thinking about them. We have to analyze and figure out how to do that. And then we have to translate that into the mechanics of the puppet. And the puppet itself has mechanical things operating the heads and the eyes and the ears and all of that stuff. So it's translating all of that into that created this monumental task.
Can you look down, Jim?
In order to do the wide shots of Jen running or walking, we had to use a fellow who was the size of the character Jen. And I think we did it effectively. I think your mind doesn't go to it. It just becomes part of Jen's character.
Door.
Suns, stars, moons, the very ankle of eternity, the very gingulus of time. How else would you know conjunctions?
I think Auger's a great character, not because I performed her, but she just looks gorgeous. She's such a beautifully designed creature. And she's a woman, which helps a great deal, because that helps the movie a lot, just to give it a different little flavor. She's so ugly, she's beautiful. So I love her. I mean, I felt I did a good job, but gee, I thought it was easy after you got the design like that and the sculpting, and it was just gorgeous.
Mind your heads, please. Mind your heads coming around again. Stay where you are, Frank. Stay where you are, Dave. Action, Jim.
I felt the body very much, the hulking mass that you moved around, and it was very scary from the outside. But there's a lot of strength in her as a character, and a lot of warmth, I hope. Besides myself, I had 3 to 4 people operating Agra. They did the eye mechanisms and the twitches, the rest of the body, some other features. So they were looking at their monitors, and I was looking at my monitor, and I had my microphone on, and I was talking to Jim and Dusty, our floor manager. Well, it got very complex.
All this, and I haven't ducked yet. Please hurt me, I'm asking for it.
With puppets, a puppet generally you're working symbolically. A puppet is a symbol of whatever you're trying to portray. And so therefore, if you have an evil character, it can look totally evil. It can be evil incarnate. If you have, as we did, sort of old, wise characters, they can be completely that. And you're not dealing with a live person, an actor who you are imagining in that role. And there is only the character himself. And so there's a kind of a purity to it. Also, I think one of the things that's nice about the Dark Crystal characters is changing the form of the creature. If you're going to go to a fantasy world, things there should not be like they are in this world. And so therefore we can have Skeksis, tall reptilian-looking creatures, characters with 4 arms, all of that. We have the ability, when you're starting from scratch, to design something in any way you want it to be. And a character can look like anything.
Okay, because the reaction of him hitting that stone should be nice. Should be.
See, we have to shoot all those reactions on you.
Keith, are we doing the bit where he's actually... Great, well done, Kieran.
Got 2 very important shots to get today. Right. Right. Dave. Neil.
Yeah, 547 take 6 camera. Call these out.
Out you go, Mike.
And 1, 2, 3, action.
There, Frank.
Relax, artist, thank you. Relax. Yes, Frank.
Over the years, we've worked with a lot of different kinds of creatures that you have to have performers inside of. And we've always found it terribly important to be able to get the people out. If you design a character that it takes, 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get into, and another 10, 15 minutes to get out of, then you'll be in there all morning. You know, the people won't get out until lunchtime. But if you have a creature that you can get into in about 1.5 minutes and out of in 30 seconds, you can take them out anytime you hit a 10-minute break. It makes the day a great deal easier on the performer.
There should be the harness at the back.
We've always worked with monitors, with television monitors, and this is so that we can see exactly what the film camera is recording. So we developed some very lightweight monitors that the performers could actually wear inside these creatures. And when I was in the Ritual Master, I always had this little monitor on my chest, and I'm inside this whole thing, and I'm in there watching television. And they pass down cold drinks for me and things like that. But without that television, we could not perform. There's no way we could do a film like this without it.
Yeah, you comfortable, Dave?
Oh, so yes.
Now, by the law, he must pay.
I love the scene where the Chamberlain is stripped. He loses the battle, and as a result, he's banished. And if you consider that all these Skeksis who have to strip him and banish him from the kingdom have, beside their own performers in them, they also have the 3 to 4 people, or 2 to 4 people. You've got Grand Central Station moving. And it was quite something to have everybody just moving. As you have a small army moving. I think it's a terrific scene because I love the idea that, as Jim and Brian and I talked about, these Skeksis have layers and layers and layers of clothing. In essence, it's their jewelry. It's their hierarchy. The more lace and jewelry and things, the prouder they are of themselves.
Now let him go! The Chamberlain is banished!
I think that probably the biggest minus of working with non-human characters is the realization of how difficult getting anything on film is. With a human actor, you can just place them in front of the camera and tell them where to go or tell them what to look like, and they do it, and they contribute their ability and talent through how they're supposed to perform. With the non-human actors, we're required to orchestrate every movement, every head turn, every eye twitch, every move from side to side.
So Lou, I'll look to camera. You do a small left, right.
For me, I think the single most important person probably was the person doing the eyes of the puppet, because without those eyes working, it doesn't live.
When they look at Stevie's yucky eye.
Okay, stand over. And action.
Keep going, Abby Natasha, keep going.
It required your puppeteering assistants that they would sit sort of on the sidelines with a monitor in front of them with a little remote control box, and they would watch your movements on that monitor, and they would go with you, making those eyes look to the right, look to the left. We had choreographed it all out beforehand and rehearsed it. But still, there was that distance, and it was very difficult.
And cut.
Video replay, please.
We did use a very involved video support system all during the picture that could record and play back everything that went on to allow them to see each take and decide how their own performance, as well as the others, were appearing on film.
That's all I wanted to get, just to give an extra little.
Rock on the floor.
I think it's fine, Jim.
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Okay, camera moves into the tunnel.
Tunnel?
Which way now?
I want to go back. I smell death here.
I know, but we have no choice.
Skeksis!
I knew you would come. Do not be afraid. I am here to help you, yes. Come, show them. Gelflings live with Skeksis together in peace. Please. No more! Let go! Leave us alone! I'll show the others.
The Black River was to be a quiet little interlude. It was sort of one little period where there was a pause. We needed to shoot at sunset, and so we went out there and shot in a very short period of time, because you don't have long to shoot when you're shooting in the twilight. As we were operating the puppets and lying down in this flat-bottom boat with another boat sitting on top of that, which was the boat we were photographing, and the whole thing sort of goes slowly along with the lights on it. And it was quite a silly-looking operation.
And then we went around and we took portions of that whole thing, the riverbank and so forth, and brought that into the studio and shot all the close-ups in there, just so that we could control the creatures and the plants and that sort of thing.
Door up, Dusty. Come with. I thought George had done it, yes. Oh. Yes, help yourself. He's hanging about. Right. Okay. And action.
Go, Michael. Okay, Steve.
The script called for the castle to be destroyed, so we built several large-scale, intricate models of the various chambers in the castle, with plaster work covering the crystalline structure underneath. Hundreds of small explosive charges were then set to break up the surface and cause it to fall away.
What we're going to do is you start to go on the count of 3. Right, ready? Go back to square one.
It was photographed by 3 high-speed cameras and had to be right the very first time, or it would have taken several days to reset.
Okay. All ready? Right.
Billy, yes, you're there. Everybody else very quiet.
Here we go now. Turn over. 3, and 1.
Making a movie like The Dark Crystal is very difficult, but then any movie is difficult. I know I'm like anybody else. I go to see a movie they spend a year or 2 making, and all the energy and time went into it, and afterwards you get out of the movie house and you say, okay, so what's for dinner? And I'm just like anybody else. But people don't realize that it's just an immense effort. It was very joyous, too, and exciting.
And 1, 2, 3, action! Biscuit! Sideways move to your right now. And right round. Whoa, and rear. And clockwise, turn. 1, 2, 3, now. And 1, 2, 3, go. Sit up, Kieran, if you can. And cut.
I think I'm very satisfied with what happened, but there's still some things in here I wish were out there. But it's okay. I think I'm happy with it.
Find the dolphin! The dolphin! Bring him to the castle!
I would hope that the audience responds to the characters in the way they would respond to human characters, that they're just there on the screen. that we may have wandered off to another planet and photographed actors that live there, and not worry about the technical side of how difficult it was to bring them to life.
I like to think of Dark Crystal as sort of a work of art, and it feels to me like it is. But it's not a personal work of art. It's not just something I did, but it's something that, you know, Frank and Brian and Gary and all the performers, so hundreds of people created this thing. And as a work, I think it's something we'll always be happy with. All in all, we spent over 5 years working on the film. It's probably the hardest thing that I've ever worked on. It was the most work, it was the most difficult, but it was the most fun, it was the most rewarding, and of all projects that I've ever worked on, it's the one that I'm the most proud of.